For sure. We're going to transition to workplace racism. Raj, you should be back with us. And our female caller who was first dialing in about the situation in Cuba, your line should be open as well if you want to participate in workplace racism. I just wanted to say really quick about, you mentioned about Assada Shakur with the Cuba situation. That I first started hearing that last year. I would not be surprised if it was brought up again this week since he was there. But when they began all of this last year and talking about changing and having better relations with Cuba, I think Governor Chris Christie, because he's in New Jersey, and that's where the shooting incident, Assada Shakur, where she was charged with shooting the enforcement official, it happened in New Jersey. I think Governor Chris Christie was one of the first people to speak up and say that, you know, this is absurd and we should not have any improved relations. If they are going to be improved relations, then a major condition needs to be that Assada Shakur needs to be handed over in return so that she can be imprisoned and serve out her sentence and all that. And there were many other white people who said the exact same thing last year, that they were totally opposed to this, and that needed to be one of the conditions. And I did hear that Cuban officials, even last year, had said that they were not going to hand Assada Shakur over, that was not something that they were going to be willing to do. However, I would definitely be mindful and remain alert if that becomes a main point of emphasis as all of this evolves and as there's increased travel between the two areas. I would just be mindful of all of that. I would not be surprised if they try to make a big to-do about all this to say that, hey, we're going to get her, we should have more access. It would not surprise me at all. With that,
thank you.
For sure.
Thank you.
For sure. With that, we'll go ahead and get to workplace racism. If folks would like to participate, the number to dial 641-715-3640 and the code 564943 pound. Press *6 if you would like to participate. Anybody that we didn't hear from, if you have something related to workplace racism, you should speak up first. If not, any folks who have commentary on workplace racism, feel free to chime in.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Greetings to Gus, the host, the listeners and callers. Just a couple of observations this week. I was sitting in the break room, and I told a story about how one white person was accused of being racist or being a racist because she made a reference to some microwaves. Now, this same white female, she has an obsession with going to the tanning salon, and she keeps saying like how she needs to get color, things like that. So she's talking to this actually the same white female that accused of it, I guess in a joking way, and she was saying, wow, you're gonna be if you keep going to do this tanning stuff, you're gonna match your eyelashes, because I guess when you look at people's eyelashes, you know, I guess they have a darker hue, and you know, this female responded saying, well, if I did any more tanning, you know, I don't want to tan too much, or I'll look like she said my name, you know, and I don't know if she thought I heard her or whatever. So I guess, you know, made like some kind of comparison, like, hey, you know, I don't want to get too dark, but, you know, you want to tan, though. So I thought about Dr. Wilson on that Phil Donahue TV show. And another incident was that I noticed that this white guy, he's been going around, like, trying to get females to touch on him in certain kind of ways, like, primarily the white one. He would try and get them to scratch his back, and I seen some of the white supervisor females, you know, go up to his back and start scratching it, but he won't necessarily touch on them himself. And I've noticed that he's been doing this tactic, you know, because I told him to stop touching on my shoulder and stuff, like last year sometime. So, you know, I don't know if he's been trying to do that in front of me, you know, they're trying to do something subliminal. But it's not directly affecting me, but I notice he'll do that, you know, and say stuff like, oh, well, you know, this won't get your boyfriend to beat me up. Well, you know, your husband, you know, just saying stuff like that. And he's being very bold about it. Like, you know, nobody can report that. And that was another incident or observation. And the next was, I heard another white male say, like, another comment. I guess he was talking about me, or another black male, about like, if there's anybody coming in, you know, causing any problems, you know, like how they have the sheriffs and bailiffs out in the front lobby. Well, he says, you know, hey, don't worry about it. If the person causes any more problems, we'll get, you know who. He said, you know who, we'll sick, you know who on them. So he used that word sick, like, you know, referring to a dog, you know, like an animal. So we'll sick them on them. And that was another thing I heard. But this last one was very interesting because we had like a young black male get gunned down or shot because he had a fake gun, I guess, and it happened last weekend. And yeah, he got fired with 18 shots, and black people's cars and homes were shot through. And this white male, he had asked me, he says, hey, do you live on, he said the address or whatever. And I was like, no, I don't live over there. And then he says, oh, well, you know, I heard on the radio that Al Sharpton was going to be coming down here to do a march. And I was like, where you heard that from? He said, oh, on this radio show. I was like, what's his name? And he said something Rose or something like that. And he said, oh, well, it was a caller that called up and said this. And then so, you know, so I'm talking to him about it, and he's about to go out of the door. So he says, you know what, I'm going to get my buddies, I'm going to round up my buddies, and we're going to get some sniper rifles. So then I asked him, I said, so what are you going to do with them guns? But then he just switches up and he says, oh, well, you know, I was just playing, man. I was just playing. So, oh, well, okay. So, you know, he goes about his business. So just the fact that he would, I guess, so-called joke about doing harm, I guess, to some black people that would be engaging in protesting, you know, that was very profound. But I expected that from this person, and yeah, that's pretty much all I have this week.
Wow. That is, white people, I've said that consistently, when white people are quote unquote joking, those are the few times when they are being honest, particularly when they're talking about black people. That is when they're being honest. And I do not think he was joking at all. That's typically been the response when black people are being serious and responding to loss of life or just dealing with racism and saying, hey, we need to get serious and try to solve this problem. White people say, hey, it's time for us to get our guns. We got niggers to take care of. I seriously doubt that he was joking and probably just altered his tone when he saw, oh, this nigger is being serious and paying attention to what I'm saying. Let me try and switch it up and just, you know, that way he won't try and make an issue of this. If we do have to go out and shoot some Negroes, they can't say that this was some premeditated attack that I was talking about on the workplace. Folks have any questions they want to get? That touching in the workplace is important too. That's one of the things we talked about a bunch on the program, and I've given my stance on that consistently about, you know, just being real opposed to any form of touching, because that can get serious, particularly if white women are involved. That can get serious in 5 seconds and can ruin your whole career, and that's come up repeatedly on the program down through the years. Folks had any questions they wanted to ask from that caller, or if you had your own observations or your own instances of workplace racism you wanted to share, feel free.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say I found it fascinating, and as soon as he said that joke, it looks like he really realized that he broke the refinement and tried to catch himself. And it really speaks to what I said, I think it was last week, and I say it very often. The same white people that we work with, that cook us food, if you eat at white establishments, who drive buses, who's your doctor or your boss, are the same today as the people who were committing genocide against our ancestors 500 years ago. And that just speaks volumes to that, because he's a so-called average citizen at an average job talking about sniping Al Sharpton and other black protesters. And these are the people. These are the same people that you ride the bus with the lily white blonde-haired kid, you know, pushing the stroller, and the kid skinning and grinning at you but thinking you're a monkey. I mean, like, I think that's just a profound example of, you know, just what I've always said. And I have my own workplace racism incident as well, but I'll mute my line in case anyone else wanted to question or have a comment towards the situation. Thank you.
I even think that's revealing, just quickly, in case other folks want to share, or if Roz, if you want to share, it's revealing in terms of white people. I think they just clump all black people together. And your part, I think you shared before, you being down in the Florida area where this incident happened with the shooting. And I think he sent me that article as well. I should have probably included that in the news clips today about the shooting incident that happened with this young black male. But him in his mind thinking, oh, yeah, all the niggas live together, so you probably live over there where this incident happened as well, even though that was not the case. I think that just shows the racist mindset that they have, that just black people are just all lumped in together in terms of that's how he was processing the situation and where you live at. If no other comments or questions, Roz, if you want to go ahead.
Yes, sir. I have a couple of observations. First one, again, is another Donald Trump moment. I had a member call in for assistance with a claim they had, and I had to explain to them again what a deductible was and that the payment was applied to a deductible. So she was not happy when she called in, and essentially she said, before the conversation even took off, she said, "I hate this Affordable Care Act. Obama's full of feces. And he's full of so much feces that he's oozing it out his ears. Vote for Donald Trump." This is before we even got into the conversation. And I was talking to my coworker because they were actually, weirdly enough, because most of this stuff it does not get discussed on the job. So when people do discuss it, my ears perk up. But they had a whole discussion about Donald Trump, and this was a white female. And she was saying how disgusted she was with how popular he is and all of this stuff. And she said, one thing I'm glad about is that I haven't had one of those Donald Trump calls, because I've heard a couple of people talking about that. I said, well, I've had 5 of them. So she said, really? I said, yeah. I said, actually, just earlier this week, I had an incident, and I explained the situation I just told you about. I said, since we've moved, because we just relocated to another building close by to where the other building is, and I said, well, I had 3 incidents of this Donald Trump stuff at the old building, and I said 2 since I got to this new building, including the one this week that I just talked about. And she was like, oh my gosh, it would really upset me if somebody called in and said something like that to me. I think I would have to respond to that. And I'm just sitting there and I'm looking at her, and I just thought to myself, I said, the only reason Donald Trump is popular is because he speaks to the white psychopathology in a way that none of the other candidates do. He's very overt. He speaks to the climate that America's going towards, which is essentially overt racism, white supremacy, and abuse and genocide against black people and non-white people. So that's why he's popular. I just didn't say anything, but I just answered her question in my head and kept it moving. So that's one incident. The second one was I brought up earlier that my job is opening a location in Arizona, and a lot of us are under the thought that once they do open that location, they're going to basically, this is what I hear the plan is to downsize the New York location and basically have this. It's a big building. It's about 4 times the space that I'm in New York, in the area in New York, and on top of that, they said they have like a gym they're building in there and all kinds of stuff. So, and the cost of living is a lot cheaper, and they own the space. So they're basically going to downsize the New York team to a specific amount of people and basically offer people jobs in Arizona. And those who can't move to Arizona basically will have to look for another job, and they'll just hire more people out there. So there's a guy who I work with who I've also introduced to the show, and I've sent him podcasts and stuff, and we've talked about racism, white supremacy, so he's fairly aware of the system. And he was saying that, of course, he cannot move to Arizona, and that he had when this Arizona situation first came up, he had asked his boss, he's a trainer on the job, if they were going to, have issues with them opening this location. Is it going to cause a problem with his job because he can't, move to Arizona? So she said, oh, everything's going to be fine. This is what she told him a few weeks back. Everything's going to be fine, and, it's not going to affect your job. You'll be good. Don't worry about it. So then he just told me yesterday that she came to him and asked him if he would be willing to move to Arizona. And he said, I knew this was coming. I said, well, the bottom line is this is how the plantation works. They always come at you in a way in which they deceive you by telling you, oh, everything's fine, it is what it is, and then eventually everything that you knew in your gut that they lied to you and told you wasn't the truth is exactly what the truth is. So he said, well, he's looking for another situation so he can transition out of that in the meantime, but essentially trying to figure out how they're going to navigate this while he's still there. So it just goes again to the rhetorical ethics of white people. They'll tell you one thing, and then they always do whatever it is they want to do regardless. And that's a great example of that. And then the third thing was the same person was talking to me. There's another black female on the job who dates a white male, and they have been together for, I think, maybe like 2 years or something like that. And he said to me, from the moment she told me she was with a white male, my alarms went off. Like, what are your parents? What are they teaching you? Like, they're not alarmed. Like, your dad wasn't upset about this because she's a black Latino. And she said basically, they allow her to date whoever she wants or whatever the case may be. So she came to him recently and said to him that her boyfriend wants to move to Arizona because he wants to buy a bunch of guns and he wants to own guns and he wants to shoot. And she's considering transitioning to Arizona so that her and her boyfriend could live out together out there, and he can get his guns, and I guess they're going to live happily ever after out there in Arizona. And he said his alarm bell just went off immensely, simply because Arizona is one of the most racist states in the country. And then I said to him, white people date black people or have sexual relations with white people to toy with them. So once he's finished using her as his sexual toilet, he's going to leave her and marry a white female and make some babies. And he said, I agree with you. He said that's what I know to be true about those people. And he said, I just don't believe she would put herself in an even more racist situation because Arizona is one of the most racist states in the country. You're isolated from your relatives who are all on the East Coast with this white terrorist, and you're in a sexual relationship with one who wants to own guns. I just don't understand that. I just said, well, it's her life. I hope that she doesn't get, into anything really serious that ruins her life. But I said she's already in a situation that is ruining her life. She's just not consciously aware of it yet, being with this white male. And that's my workplace racism observations of this week. And I thank you for taking my call.
Fascinating. I would encourage folks to make sure, codify on the job, because my suspicion if Donald Trump, if he gets the nomination, which it looks like he will, it'll probably be more of comments being made by white colleagues, even if they don't make a colleague, them asking a question of you. What do you think about Donald Trump? Are you going to vote for him? That sort of thing. I suspect it's going to be more of that. So I would encourage people, already have your response if you want to say that you don't pay attention to politics or whatever you think would be best for you to say. But I think that would be good to already have that in mind so that you're not stunned. And even if they do make a racist comment like what Raj just shared, just already have in mind, I'm not surprised, never be surprised about whites practicing racism. And you can make a record of it. I've encouraged that as well. Just people keeping a journal or just write it down that this was indeed said. With the latter point, the sexual terrorism, that's folks can come up with the Arizona situation as well. Keep in mind that was one of the holdout states for not having the Martin Luther King holiday. That's something that we've talked about quite a bit over the years in terms of that area of the world, and just the whites with guns. That's 2 in a row. Workplace racism where whites are talking about, or it's coming up, white people wanting to purchase guns, even if they're not directly being the ones that are talking about it, but just white people and guns probably will be an increase of that as things continue. In my view, we we are moving away from the refinement stage of white supremacy. This is going back to establishment, much more blatant, much more intense, violent form of white terrorism. Folks had commentary on what they heard from Roz or questions, feel free. If not, if you have your own situation you want to share, that is welcome as well.
Yeah, Roz, are you going to move to Arizona, or are you not going to? Have you decided what you're going to do? I know it's your situation, but I just was curious.
Oh, I'm not going anywhere. There's no way I could actually pick up and move to Arizona. With the situation I have with my in-laws is really intense, and besides, I have no interest in moving anywhere near more white people and being isolated in an area surrounded by literally militias and Duck Dynasty nut job white people who are just looking to shoot people. Because I knew someone actually that used to live in Arizona, and he got into activism work out there, helping Native Americans and Mexicans and whatnot. And he talked about being followed by like white people in cars with guns. He said he was shot at one time. So I mean, like they get busy out there. They really are not a joke. So I have no interest in that. And also just my family situation. All my relatives who are in the States for the most part that I'm close to that are from Trinidad are all based in the New York area on the East Coast. My immediate family, as far as my sister, my parents are here. My in-laws are here. My son is here. He goes to school. So definitely I won't be going out there at all. I think it's really weird how they really do not. They talk about transparency in the job, but there is absolutely no transparency when it comes to the way that the plantation operates and when Master's making his decisions to get rid of the Negroes that he doesn't need anymore. So for me, I never really stopped looking for work when I got there, even though I would say it was a job that I enjoy what I was doing, but ultimately I don't get comfortable like that simply because I like to be aware of what's already out there in case of any sort of contingency plans that have to come up. So that's just the way that I normally function. And with this coming up the way it is, I'm just going to continue to, keep my feelers out there. If something else that looks better than what this situation is comes up, then I'll move on. And if I happen to be in that core group that they plan to keep, then I'll be there. But like I said, I'll just always keep my eyes open for what's going on. I don't ever get comfortable to the point that I lose an understanding of what the job market holds out there, so that if I do have to transition quickly or whatever the case may be, I might already have my resume sitting in somebody's desk waiting to be looked at. So that's how I kind of look at the whole situation. I don't get nervous about it. It's a way of life. And I don't expect, it's very rare nowadays for anyone to be on any job for like 30, 40 years. That's just not the case anymore. So I just keep it moving. But thanks.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Oh, man. How's it going, everyone? It's the caller in Connecticut, and it's workplace racism is hard to reach. White people do a good job of controlling my time. I'm actually just caught the show about 20 minutes ago. Been meaning to share, this story for like 2 weeks now, but I just haven't, been able to catch the show. But anyway, so speaking of guns being talked about inside workplace racism, caller in Connecticut I am. So I don't know if you guys are aware of the mailman here in Connecticut who pretty much got pistol whipped by a white man in the city of Waterbury, Connecticut. Did anyone hear about that?
We played it during the clips. Yes, we did. That was not the only black postal worker that was abused in the last few days, but yes, we did play it.
Okay, so yeah, this is what's interesting about this. So I got like a little inside scoop. So I have I happen to, be in the post office in the state of Connecticut. I have a close friend that's in the post office as well, who actually knows the guy, and who actually attested to the fact of, him being called, a nigger while he was being pistol whipped on the ground. I know, you're not supposed to get surprised about that, but it's just like, golly, man, he gets pistol whipped like that. I don't know. I don't know. I try not to get surprised, but that was a little outrageous. And so there's these people called union stewards, right? So far, what I've heard from union stewards and what they're going to do about this is absolutely nothing. Like a few of the offices actually, made some cards for the man, and plan on sending them off. Like, made some cards, got some envelopes, put some money in them and stuff like that. And going to be sending it off to him. But it's very unfortunate, and I totally agree. It has went back from refinement to establishment because it's crazy. Like the white man's first reaction was just violence. You know what I'm saying? Like he didn't yell out or anything. And me being a mailman, I understand. Like he's probably working residential, and it's like you gotta go, man. Like it's not like it's a continual thing. I doubt it was, but it's like. The mailmen are in situations like that. If you're new on a route, you know what I mean? Like, you don't know the area like that, you duck behind somewhere and, take care of your business. But, I just wanted to add that. And, I'll mute my line. And hello, everyone.
Right on. With that incident specifically, the white person, I think it's also significant. This wasn't just a random white citizen that pistol whipped this. This is a federal employee, postal worker. This was a white corrections officer. So people just want to keep that in mind in terms of what happens when you are in greater confinement. These are the type of white savages that will literally have your life in their hands. And I'm not saying that as a metaphor. I mean, this is the truth. If he can pistol whip a federal employee out in broad daylight in the middle of a street, imagine what I can do to a convict once I get you behind bars and anything happens. We bring up the flick, but I think that's equally important. And if people could if you could imagine if this was turned around, if it was a Muslim in a turban, if it was a black person who had went out and pistol whipped a white postal worker in broad daylight, how this case would be talked about, how this case would be reported, what would be done, regardless if the black person or if it was a Muslim, if they were a corrections officer, or if they were just a regular citizen, if they had went out and done this, the way that this would be talked about. I suspect that this would be competing with the situation in Belgium, at least in this area of the world, in terms of most talked about news events if this had happened to a white person. But this is the system of white supremacy, and, do not be surprised. Oh, and since this is Connecticut and workplace racism, Omar Thornton felt obligated to mention him as well. Folks have any other comments they wanted to get to that, or other things they wanted to share related to workplace racism?
May I be heard?
Yeah. We'll get the female caller first.
Okay. This is female caller in New York. I just remembered who said at Donald Trump's rally that they called it a show. It was Donald Trump. He was saying, well, when you come to my shows, you can expect to see all kinds of things. I said to myself, look, he just called this rally a show. So that was very, very revealing. I don't know if people caught that. But anyway, I just wanted to discuss the situation that was going on with me in my workplace that I had discussed with Mr. Williams back in, I guess it was last spring, with regard to a racist on my job sending me these very egregious emails, and my attempts to address them with her for the second time. This had been going on for 2 years, and management involvement. Basically what happened is that management had a meeting with me acknowledging that affirmative action, the AA officer was supposed to sit down and sort of have a mediation, and they informed me that they were not going to be a part of that mediation, even though that was something that the AA officer recommended. They let me, the director and the deputy director, let me know that they were not going to do that. Now, the racist who was sending me these, racist white female who was sending me these egregious emails with regard to trying to have a working relationship with her, also informed me that she was not participating in any mediation. procedures. I said, okay, that doesn't stop me from sitting down with the AA officer and having a meeting with her. So I'm waiting, and I was waiting. This was back in, I think we can say back in July or August. So I waited from May till August, and nothing happened. So I went to my union person, and I said, I'm waiting for this meeting with our affirmative action officers. We can sit down and at least document this and come and have some sort of resolution and have some sort of closure. And we had no AA officer. The AA officer quit. Now, those affirmative action officers usually hold that title along with some other job title, and they generally get so overwhelmed that they can't function. So she went and she transferred to another borough. Okay, so I looked at my paycheck, one pay period, I think it was in September, and I was short $800. And I said, what is going on here? And I looked at the code next to it, and I was being garnished for student loans. I had been paying my student loans for quite some time. I had an arrangement with them, so I didn't understand why I was being garnished. So I called about it, and they admitted that they made a mistake. Yet, again, 2 more pay periods later, I was garnished again. Now, I work for the state of New York. I just wanted to say that. All right. So on top of that, we get something called longevity pay. I had confirmed with my union person and, with my union person that I was supposed to get my longevity pay in September. Waited for the first period of September, pay period of September, no longevity pay. Second pay period, no longevity pay. So I go to personnel, payroll and personnel, and they said, "Oh, you don't get your longevity pay until 2017." I said, "Oh, okay." And I was going to work, and I was getting sick. All the stress, everything that I had been through. Oh, another thing, I asked to be transferred or to have help. Actually, I asked to have help. First, I asked to get some assistance because I was the only one doing what I was doing for 2 boroughs in my entire district. Everybody else had 1 borough. I was doing what I was doing for the Bronx and Manhattan. I got nothing. I asked to go into another unit. I got nothing. I started to come to work, and I began to heat up, literally. I would sit down and begin to get hot. And then I would try to calm down, and the first task that I had to come across, if I couldn't complete it, I would just get physically sick. So I looked at how many, I looked at the nickels that I had saved up after 21 years, a few promotions, but 21 years, and I decided to call it a day. And I went into semi-early retirement. Now, I'd like to tell everyone, when you have these situations and they begin to make you sick, and, we try to figure out the best ways to deal with these things. I was in a situation, fortunately, where I could leave. The financial stability and all of that, I could leave. But what I did do that I shouldn't have done was I kept it all to myself. I didn't tell my family about what I had done because I was afraid of some sort of judgment. And I also had some sense of feeling that I was defeated by the system, that they had won, even though I came out of the system and I hadn't suffered any financially. The first thing I did, and I left very calmly, the first thing I did was call the governor's office. And I called the governor and I let him know what the New York State Higher Education Services Corporation, how they had made that error and had not resolved it. When the Higher Education Services Corporation called me and found out that I had called the governor's office, because the governor's office called them, not only did they decide to give me $1,600 back, they gave me an extra $800. I don't know if that was hush money or what, but I got $2,400 back. So I was glad about that. Like I said, I had saved up enough pennies. I have another stream of income when I'm able to work out of my home. I'm in the middle of relocating to some place where I would have a quieter life and be able to do what I do out of my home still. But I just wanted to say that we're in these situations. It was hard for me to even talk about this for a long time. When we're in these situations, we have to discuss them, because not discussing them, and I think that's why I'm thankful for this platform. It took me a long time to even discuss this on this platform. When we don't talk about them, it makes us sicker, and it brings a lot more stress. And it's something that you discussed at the end of your talk with Lauren Cress Love, where you had said something that Dr. Wilson discussed with you, Gus, about how she believed that a lot of black people, the high unemployment rate was because of the fact that we just gave up. And when I heard that, I said, you know what? There is a whole lot of truth to that. I gave up, and I gave up in a certain point in my career where it's not as detrimental to me as with other people who decide this is too much, I got to give up. I'm just going to do what I do on the street, or they might get into something that maybe may not be as advantageous to them and their family, and they don't have the opportunity to do the things that they wanted to do because of the system. And another thing I wanted to mention, just very briefly, you spoke about this whitening, this application whitening. I was given something when I left called an exit interview questionnaire. And I was very, very suspicious of it. And I just wanted to know if anybody had anything like this in their workplace. I've had any experience with something like this. And do they believe that this is something that whites use to label you and hold you back? Because it's a series of questions, and it's very general with the type of answers you can give is agree, disagree, or no opinion. All right, and it asks questions like, it starts out with, did you have the opportunity to use your skills? Did you receive adequate training on your job? Overall, and the questions seem to get hotter. Is that a metaphor? I'm sorry, but the questions seem to get hotter as they go along. It goes, did you have a good overall relationship with your supervisor? Were you treated fairly by your supervisor? Was your supervisor receptive to and implemented your suggestions? So I was very suspicious of this tool, and I thought that it was a tool that is used to label black people as they're exiting or if they're quitting or something like that, and it's very, very revealing. So that if maybe somebody is going for another job and they use that prior job for a reference, they have this tool to refer back to. So I think that we should be very, very careful and very mindful when we're given things like this, when we're leaving jobs, because just as an employment application is used to target you, so could an exit tool be used to target you. So I just wanted to share that, and thank you for listening.
To that last point, Chantel, she's been on the program many times, the guest and just caller. I just spoke. She switched plantations, if you will. She got a different job, better benefits and what have you, and that's what they did to her when she was transitioning. They gave her this packet or what have you, part of her exit interview and all that. Fill this out as you're leaving. And she had the exact same suspicions, also because she was leaving for a better job, that she got a feeling like, they might be trying to besmirch her employment record so that, she doesn't get a great recommendation, or they can be like, oh yeah, she, quit on us and she's not, a long-term employee. You don't want to invest in her because she's just going to be a waste of time. And then with the questions that they add, and I think it was similar types of questions. Did you enjoy your experience here? Did you feel valued as an employee? Those types of things, where if you answer honestly, like, I was treated as a nigger my whole time here, then it's, oh yeah, don't hire this person anymore, blah, 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 don't give them a job, don't give them a promotion, that sort of thing. So it seems to be consistent.
I thought so. I was very, very suspicious of that tool. I answered it, very generally. Yeah, everything went fine. It was beautiful, Even though I'm coming out after over 20 years, it's not something that I'm anticipating. So getting something else where somebody would have to refer back to that. But I just wanted to let the listening audience know to be very, very suspicious of that tool, because I think it's along the same lines as an employment application with them targeting us.
I'm familiar with that tool as well, and I once worked at Deloitte, which is a huge accounting firm, a financial institution, and they used the tool because they wanted to be amongst the 10 top companies for employees in the country every year. That was their standard. So this was a tool that they used this is what they said when I left the company, they used so that they could make that list. So, they submit this to whatever organization picks the 10 best companies, and they're able to use from the exit interviews. That's how they pick what companies make that list. And I also was told at another company, this happened to me twice, so it must be standard practice when you're leaving a company on your own will, not getting fired or anything, but if you're leaving the company for another job, part of the exit interview is doing this survey. And what I've heard from a person that worked in human resources who I was cool with when they gave it to me at this job, they said if you don't give them good reviews, if you ever want a job there again, they won't hire you back. That's what they use it for at that place.
Yep, that makes sense. With the choices, with the choices you get agree, disagree, or no opinion. And then they give the little box just in case you have anything else you want to say. And my comments were thank you.
I just wanted to say I agree with everything all of you said, but I also think too that when they collect them, if they get enough of them from enough people of a specific quote unquote race, I think it also gives them insight into how the refinement of racism, white supremacy is working on the psyche of the black people who leave. So I definitely agree with everything all of you said as far as them using it as a tool to either ruin your future prospects or not hire you if you attempt to come back to the company. But I also think it's used as a psychological analytical tool to see how they're affecting the mental state of the black people who are leaving voluntarily. So in other words, what's pushing them out the door, and they figure out what they need to do more of, and when they want to go in that direction, and what they need to maybe refine or better refine moving forward as well. I just wanted to chime in with that.
I agree.
Before Nab, it was somebody else that spoke up as well. I also thought it was really important, the piece about, you said you felt like they had beaten you. I might be paraphrasing, but I thought that was really important, just in terms of talking about black mental health, that we should really make sure that we pay attention to how all of this impacts us. And even when you were talking about how it impacted you physiologically when you were on the job, and the stress that you felt when you got there, if you had difficulty completing a task because of going through all of this. I think, number one, when people had asked before why Ta-Nehisi Coates and others have emphasized how this impacts black bodies, the physical toll that racism takes on us, I think that's an illustration of why, that this is not just people talking and, I felt a little bit bad. Like, no, this is impacting me on not just a spiritual level and not just an emotional level. Like, this is having a physical impact on my being, what whites are doing to us. But I think that is hugely important in terms of not talking about it and or feeling somehow that you've been defeated, or because I had a different listener who was talking about workplace racism, same thing, in feeling either ashamed or embarrassed, or, I mean, it's just not pleasant talking about how whites have terrorized you on the job, and you know, this is your livelihood, you depend on this to be able to take care of yourself and your family is just not the most exciting thing to talk about. But it is hugely important because I think a lot of black people end up feeling that I'm a coward, or I am not living up to the person that I would like to see myself being in terms of what's happening to me on the job, and not being able to respond in the way I would like to, or not being able to get justice for myself in this workplace situation. It is hugely important to have an outlet, even if it's not this program, even if it's just a journal, even if it's just one person. If you have a partner or a friend or a family member, it's hugely important, because not having that outlet, that's how you end up with situations like what happened with Leonida McClain. That's how you end up. That can be the final result of having that daily stress. And I mean, that is such a monumental piece of stress for black people worldwide, having that stress. And for black people who are not in the situation, like our female caller in New York, where you could just say, hey, I have saved up my money. This is not going to put me in a situation where I can't put food on the table. I can walk away, and you know, I'm still going to be okay. For a lot of black people, they do not have that convenience, so it amplifies the stress of that situation, just emphatically. In, I don't know how to deal with this. I'm struggling with how to deal with this. I feel bad because I'm not able to deal with this in a more productive manner, and this might hugely impact me being able to take care of myself or my family or what have you. It causes so much strain for black people that ends up impacting so many different areas of our lives, which is why I say this is something that we should be talking about on a constant basis, because I'm convinced every single black person is dealing with this to some degree. I wouldn't care if it's First Lady Michelle Obama, President Obama, whomever the black person is, no matter how many nickels they got in the bank, they are dealing with this at some level. It is inescapable in the system of white supremacy. But I think that's hugely important, and I'm glad you shared that aspect as well.
I just wanted to add, I'm very thankful for my mother. I held this from her for so long because she worked my mother worked very hard all her life. And all I ever heard all my life was, I'm just going to work and retire and go down south. That's all I ever heard. So, I thought she was going to hold me to this standard, and it was very difficult. But I finally told her, and she supportive. She understood, and she told me if anything I needed, let her know. And if I wanted to come back on South Carolina, that was fine. She was so. And I took her up on that. So that's where I'm transitioning. I'm working some things out, and I'm going to relocate. Also, talk to your elders. Your elders have lived. They have had experiences, and they're probably too traumatized to talk about. But I think that if, as the younger generations, if we let them know that we understand, we're going through something too, we'd be very, very surprised at the wealth of knowledge that they can give us. And I think Dr. Welsing's life is a wonderful example of that, to hear all of those things that her and her sisters have gone through in their lives. So I've talked to your elders. That helps as well. That's all I had. I'll mute my line.
Hey, and also for the lady call who just spoke, did any of your stress contribute to the job you did as well? Because you said you had to service 2 boroughs. I'm in Harlem, and you said you had to service Manhattan and the Bronx. And whatever, services you were providing, I could imagine the amount of, hard times that you see amongst the black people, mostly that live in the upper Manhattan and Bronx area, that they face, and Latinos as well. Did that comply to your stress as well on the job?
It did a lot, primarily because the funding changed. There is no money to provide these services, and they want us to jump through hoops and find a way to get this stuff done. The systematic changes that they made, there was no way in the world that I could really continue to do that. And like I said, the Bronx, the service that I was providing, the Bronx is so heavily populated. It's ridiculous, the amount of people that we had to serve in the Bronx. Very, very populated. Manhattan, a lot as well. But I was doing 2 boroughs, and no other person in the state of New York was doing, in any district, were doing two separate, well, they would call them counties upstate. No one was doing 2 counties. So, yeah, that contributed a lot. The racist emails, the fact that my money was being, disappearing out of my check for no reason. Yeah, it contributed a lot. But like I said, there was no funding. They took the money away. So that was the beginning of it.
Whites do that sort of retaliatory thing as well. I thought that it was so many different aspects, but that sort of thing is to be expected. That's standard operating procedure. Any Negro that has gotten, hey, you're going to speak up, you're going to be uppity and try and call us out on the job. They do that sort of retaliation where they will work together and mess you over on your check or mess you over on your hours, change your schedule around, make it difficult for you if you are responsible for picking up your child. So you need to be off at a certain time. They'll mess your schedule around to make that difficult. You can just expect all of that sort of thing. And I view those all as acts of racism, white supremacy. And as you were talking about the person that was supposed to be doing the mediating, and then they end up not even, they don't even have a person in that post anymore. I've seen it. I think people have talked about that before. I think that's another deliberate act of racism where they know people that are supposed to be dealing with instances of racism on the job. They know these people are not supposed to get anything done. This is supposed to be a very impotent position. So we will deliberately make sure that they get overwhelmed and taxed and what have you, so that you just have constant turnover in these positions where people know that they're not able to effectively perform the job, and then they just end up quitting and leaving. I've seen that pattern play out repeatedly as well.
There's no question in my mind that was retaliatory. There was no question at all. That's why I called the governor's office. Okay? The governor has this one telephone number that's connected to all of his agencies. Being that I was on the inside, I understood that, and I knew the power of calling that governor's office, because those agencies don't want to get a phone call for that governor's office, and which is why I think that they gave me an extra $800. But I'll just, that's just speculation.
Gus, I wanted to speak to something that the female just talked about in regards to speaking about what's happening to you and just getting it out. First, I had one of my closest friends actually committed suicide due to being terrorized on the job by white people. And also, my wife had been terrorized so much that it followed her. So she would go from job to job and have these experiences where one time they tried to frame her for stealing someone's pocketbook. They would proceed. She was doing in one position she was editing a yearly book that would come out that would speak about, I guess, the financial status of the company, and they would put subtle messages to her in there, and the messages would say something like, the fiscal year 2016, we made XYZ amount of money, you will not get paid on Friday. Then it would go back to just speaking about the financial stuff, and it would be like these little subliminal messages that they would put in writing to her. And they would make comments in the office whenever she would come around. And she had gotten tortured psychologically so much that when you speak about that suicidal intent, they pushed her to the edge. And we had to sit down one day because she would just give me these stories on a regular basis. And she would leave one job, and I would tell her to quit. So she would quit the job, go to a temp agency. The temp agency would send her to the job, and then that job that she got through the agency, it would be a whole new set of crap that she would go through. And after a number of years of this, we sat down one day, and I said, you know what? I don't want you working anymore. I said, and whatever I have to do to make sure that we're good, I will do it. And I said, you can do something else where you don't have to go on anybody else's plantation. And she actually started getting into art. She's been exhibited in a number of museums and a number of different exhibits and things like that. But ultimately, beyond that, both of her parents ended up getting sick. So now she basically takes care of them, and she also does her art. And I basically go out on the plantation. But that came from a discussion, regular discussion about what she was experiencing on the job, and me seeing the psychological effect it was having on her, and me making a decision to sit with her and say, you know what, this is the way we're going to move forward as a family. My son was older at the time, and he had gotten a full scholarship to the school that he was going to as far as the high school at that time. So as far as that, there was a situation that worked out financially where we could have done something like that. And it just comes from having that honest discussion with your partner, or like she said, if it's your mom, elders, all of these things can really help to alleviate the pressure that's put on you that can push you over the edge to hurt yourself or potentially go off and, go off on a killing spree or whatever the case may be. So thank you very much. I just wanted to chime in with that. Thank you so much.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just a couple of things, like workplace, and I just want to piggyback on like the young lady said, and like you mentioned too about retaliatory things. I also think too, then like the gentleman just said about how they was set, how they could set you up. And just a quick story, I can remember this was years ago, so this story it's a workplace situation. It was like over 30 years ago. Well, about that long. And actually, I was much younger, right out of college, had a lot of mouth and everything we had because I ended up getting fired from the job. And then when I look back on it, me running my mouth, helped contribute to that. But I remember one incident that took place because by then there were things going on at the job and, people coming at me. So I remember we used to get paid. And it's just every time I would go get my paycheck from the lady who gives our paycheck, and she would give my paycheck, and you had to sign for it. And I would say, "Are you sure you don't have another paycheck in there for me?" And we'd laugh about it like a little joke, a little game. So one day I came, and I signed for my paycheck and everything, and I said, "You sure you don't have another paycheck for me?" And she says, "Kim, I do have another paycheck for you." So I looked at the paycheck. I looked at the and I took it and I signed for it. So I was like, something wrong with here because I should not be having a second paycheck. Now, keep in mind, there was a lot of turmoil going on with me and my job, me and my supervisors and stuff. And I should not have a second paycheck. Why am I getting two paychecks, on my payday? So I remember eventually I walked around with a paycheck, and then I remember I went down to HR. And I was talking to the lady in HR about it. So, they act like, oh, gosh, we just don't understand. We don't understand, So she said, well, let us have it. And we'll investigate, what was going on here. And we'll let you know. So I'll just say to you all, I'm still waiting, for them to let me know. It's been 30-something years. And my whole point, I thought, and I was telling the best friend of mine, after I said, if I had cashed that check, I said, they would have came down on me. It would have been like the whole world was coming down on my back. I should probably even prosecute it that you stole this money. This check wasn't yours, and, you stole this money. I just thought that's what they would have did. And I say that to say because sometimes black people, we can be so gullible, unfortunately. This, I'm not trying to be anti-blackness, but I just think, like you say, things that we have to open up our eyes to because, somebody comes, like I said, it was a joke. Oh, you got a second check for me. Well, this day she did have one, and I knew. There was no second check, but I do know it's sad to say there have been some black people like, oh, yeah, thank you. Then they cash the check, and now they're in trouble, So I definitely understand, that situation, with like you say, that retaliatory, that weight and that pressure and, it's almost like you work in your department, and it's almost like the whole department is on your back. And the other thing, too, I want to say is, like she said, she wouldn't talk to, I think she said, her family because she felt she would have been judged. And unfortunately, when it comes to us, we, our families do judge us because, it's almost kind of like we should be happy we got these jobs, it's sad to say, what I call like front door jobs, as opposed to when, our parents or our grandparents or great grandparents had the back door jobs. And then, you come basically find out you almost probably still doing the same. Or if we got the front door jobs, we still making the money that they were making the back door jobs, which isn't enough. But it's like so we have to start talking to each other. The gentleman just before me said eventually he sat down and talked to his wife, and they had to come to, like he said, I will do what's necessary. You just stop working because, he, recognized that what's happening with my wife in her workplace or workspaces is affecting our marriage at home. And then, like the young lady said, we being almost ashamed to talk to people at home because, unfortunately, sometimes, I've had situations with my family who, I'm trying to explain to them what's going on. They looking at me like I'm crazy. And you got a degree, you should be able to explain. It's not that simple. So I just say that we need to, like you say, be able to talk to each other. And then, like you say with Lenita McClain, not having nobody to talk to. And just as I listened to that, to her story, some of the things that she was saying, I would sit there, because I listened to it in the archive because, I'm at work, and I was sitting up there, and I'm like, it's almost sad, some of the things that she was saying, and it's just painful, like you say, not having nobody to talk to or not talking to anybody. And then in her case, she suffered from depression, and unfortunately, if we don't, then eventually these things like depression, and like the gentleman said, afraid suicidal thoughts and suicide things that can come up. And I just wanted to say that, and I'll mute my line. Thank you.
For sure. The person that dialed in from a block number, do you have a comment? If it's your own situation, that's fine too. But if you had an observation or comment you wanted to get in before we get ready to close out, person that dialed in from a block number?
No, I'm good. I appreciate all the callers sharing what they're sharing. It's really helpful. Appreciate it.
Right on. We did our overtime and everything. We will close things out there. I can only since the payroll aspect of it seemed to be significant as well. That it's just so many layers. I know when we had Lauren Kreslov on the program earlier this week, and just talking about how it might be one acute episode that can lead to a black person becoming self-destructive or just completely removing themselves from the job market or however they deal with things. But there's so many other incidents that have led to that decision. And I know personally, I remember working, and I think I had mentioned it before, I would go to the bank after I got my nickels to go cash my check, and it would be this long process. We need a DNA sample and a urine test and fingerprints and 5 forms of identification. And I'm exaggerating, but it was pretty close to that sort of thing. And I remember I went in, I was at job, and I was in the office that dealt with finances, and it was a white person. And he said, with a laugh, he said, the bank, they call here to verify that you're one of our employees whenever you get paid. And he was just thought this was so funny. And he said, they don't do that for anybody else. We have all these other people that work here. They don't do that for anybody else. It's just you. And he just cracked up laughing like this was so funny. And he said, you know what that is, of course. And I said, what is that? He said, it's because you're a black person. And he just laughed and laughed and laughed and kept on rolling. But those types of things where black people, you're constantly running into white supremacy in all areas of people activity, but especially on the job. That stress, it becomes cumulative and it impacts health in so many different ways. Just not something that we should minimize. We should really be serious about that. And I say that's why this segment of the program is extremely important, that people should, if you journal, we have people that do that as well, journal. If you have a family member or a friend or whomever that you can make time to share some of these issues with, it is extremely important. And you can develop strategies when you start to understand this, and it takes some of the blame off you. I've found also that a lot of people, they end up internalizing that. Frequently ends up being the result where the black person concludes that it's something defective about them. It's something that they shouldn't have done, where they just blame themselves, and that just drives for the whole depression and becoming self-destructive about things, as opposed to really focusing and being clear that the people that are most to blame are white. Doesn't mean that you don't look for strategies to try to neutralize this, to make things better for yourself, but just recognizing that you are being mistreated, that this is designed. That's one of the reasons that I think it's important to share this as well, that you can hear how common this is and how you have so many similarities in terms of black people all over the world who are experiencing the exact same types of problems on the job from whites. This is deliberate. It's not accidental. With that, we'll wrap things up, and we should be back the early part of next week. If you have questions, confusion, gripes, suggestions, feel free, drop an email, untiljustice@gmail.com, untiljustice@gmail.com. Thanks again for everyone tuning in and sharing. I hope it has been a constructive investment of your Saturday evening. Again, sobriety would be best under conditions of war. You do not want to be behind the wheel, passenger, pedestrian, and have Darren Wilson, Daniel Holtzclaw be the one that is pulling you over and can totally ruin your life, if not take your life. Let's make sure that we're making the best possible decisions to keep ourselves as safe as possible and anybody that we might be responsible for. With that, Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother.
Problem. You're a victim.
I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.